Hello everyone and welcome to the Library Kitchen here at the Gloucester County Public Library. I'm Chris and I've got a special guest with me today, Betty Wren Day from the Gloucester Matthews Gazette Journal.
Great.
And Betty, you are the food writer for the Gazette Journal.
Yes.
And how long have you been writing for them?
About 43 years.
43 years. Wow. Well, today...
Long time.
Long time. Have you ever in those years made a Gloucester tart?
No. Not a Gloucester tart.
Not a Gloucester tart. Well, today, in honor of Global Gloucester Day on September 2nd, we are going to be making a Gloucester tart. That recipe...
That's interesting, yeah.
Look, it took a lot of research for me to figure out how to make one of these
I bet it did.
And the recipe came from our county administrator, Carol Steele, who went to Gloucester last year for Global Gloucester Day on vacation, and she brought back this recipe and said, hey, do you think the library chef can make a Gloucester tart? And I said, I think I can make it. I don't know what it is, but I'll do a little research and give it my best shot.
You can do it. You can do it.
We'll try.
You can do it.
So Betty, today we're going to be making a Gloucester tart, which starts with a short crust pastry, which is kind of like a pie crust. It's got a little more fat and a little less flour, and that's why it's called short crust, because it's short on flour. And so there's more fat in this short crust than a pie crust would normally be. So we're going to make ours in the food processor today. All right.
Everything.
So everything. We're going to start with 2 cups of all-purpose flour. We'll just put this in our food processor. All right. Next, we're going to put in 8 tablespoons of butter that's cold. Kind of similar to making a pie crust, right?
I see you have it chopped up.
I do.
Great.
That way, it was diced so it will help incorporate into the flour. Just a pinch of salt. All right, so that's the beginning of our crust. We're going to put our food processor lid on, clamp it down, and then we're going to pulse this for about 15 times to cut the butter into the flour. If you've made biscuits, well, I bet you've made biscuits before. You've done it, you've cut the butter into the flour. I'm just using the food processor.
And that does it much easier.
Much easier and faster. So 15 times, and this will cut that butter into the flour. All right.
That sure beats cutting. Remember how we used to cut it like this?
I've done it with my fingers. I've done it with a pastry blender.
That sure beats it, yeah.
So this does beat that. It's a little faster. And so as you can see, the consistency, the butter has actually little clumps of butter in that flour.
Sure has.
So we're going to put it back on, and we're going to add just a little bit of water. Just about 4 tablespoons to begin with. And then our dough is going to start to come together. Yep. I'm going to take the spout out. And as I pulse this, I'm going to drizzle just about a tablespoon of water at a time. So 1 tablespoon of ice cold water. That's 1. You will start seeing the dough come together in just a second.
Yeah. Is it just enough so it's pliable, you can work with it?
That's exactly right. So a couple more tablespoons. And I can see it starting to come together.
I see it.
All right, I think I'm going to do 1 more tablespoon. That gives us 6. All right, so let's check it to see if we need any more water. And so your crust should be able to hold together if you squeeze it in your hands. So sure enough, look at that. Look at that pastry crust.
Right.
So what we're going to do is we're now going to turn this out on our pastry mat. Could you flour this just a little bit with our shaker there?
Here.
And you don't need your gloves, but you can just give us just a little bit of flour.
You don't want to put too much flour, I'm sure.
Not a whole lot.
Is this too much?
That's perfect.
Okay.
All right, so I'm just going to dump this out on our mat. And what we're going to do with this, we're going to bring it together, knead it for just a second to kind of get it into a disc. Then we'll wrap it in some saran wrap.
It has to chill.
Chill for about an hour to overnight. It's up to you. So as you can see, I'm gonna just bring my pastry crust together. Looks just like a perfect pie dough, right?
It sure is.
So we're just gonna knead this together a little bit. And I don't think we really need a whole lot of kneading with this. It's perfect. So there's our crust.
Right, there it is.
It's all together. So what we're going to do now is just wrap it with some saran wrap and put it in the refrigerator.
Right.
And I've got one that's already chilled.
You can roll out.
Yep. So let me get some saran wrap and I'll be back with with the other crust.
Did you create this way of making it, or did the original recipe say use a blender?
The original recipe wanted you to do it by hand.
That's right. That's what I
pastry
thought.
crust by hand. I did find a couple recipes that I have done using my fingers, a pastry cutter, and I did find a couple recipes using the food processor. It just makes it a lot quicker when doing it.
Well, you've developed this. You've taken this recipe and developed it to a more modern way of making it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Somebody else probably did it, but I'm using it today.
Yeah.
So I'll get this wrapped up and we'll get it in the refrigerator to chill for about an hour to overnight's good. So I'll be right back.
Okay. Here it is.
Well, Betty, here is our chilled pie dough that I made last night.
More flour?
Just a little bit if you don't mind.
Just a little bit more, okay?
Yep. I've got 2 pieces here.
I love your board here.
Thank you. This recipe calls for 6 ounces of pastry short crust. And so this is about 6 ounces that I cut a little while ago. So I'm just going to rub this with a little bit of flour. And if you could hand me my rolling pin. And this has been in the refrigerator overnight. But we're going to roll it to about 1/8 of an inch thick.
Well, look how nice it rolls.
I might need a little flour on my rolling pin here. There we go. Because we're going to be using a 2-inch biscuit cutter to cut out our little rounds to go in our patty tin. Have you ever heard of a patty tin?
No, I hadn't until.
So these tarts are made, they're about 2 inches around, and they are made in a little pan that's normally used for mincemeat pies, and it's called a patty tin. So we're going to roll out our dough here just so that we can cut out about 12 2-inch circles of dough, and then we're going to fill those pastry shells basically with a little bit of jam and a little bit of custard. So let's see if we can get 12 pieces of dough.
Sounds exactly like an excellent tea accompaniment.
It's perfect
English
for tea.
tea accompaniment.
So this is the patty tin. It's called it's a little mincemeat pie tray. It's rounded on the bottom. And using a 2-inch biscuit cutter is perfect size for this little tin. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our tin. We're going to take our biscuit cutter. I had it right here.
Here it is, right there.
And we're just going to cut little 2-inch rounds and place them in our patty tin. And I've got a tamper that I'm going to actually use to push the dough into the pan.
It does very well. It doesn't break. In other words,
Doesn't break?
Is that because of the butter? There's much butter?
It's a lot of butter, a lot of fat, not as much flour in this recipe. Let's see how many we've got. So the custard that we're going to make is called a frangipane, which is a egg, sugar, rice flour. The recipe originally in England called for ground rice, but you can't really find that over here in the States. So I actually contacted the Gloucester, England Museum, and they recommended using rice flour. So that's what we've got today. Let's see.
So that's the flour you use.
That's the flour we're going to use in our custard.
In your custard.
Yep. So these are fitting just perfect.
The rice, yeah.
So we're going to And I can get just, I need 3 more.
Now you got to roll this
And
together.
I roll this out. I need 3 more. So let's see if I can get this to roll.
And it doesn't get tough rolling that much.
Not really. Because we're only rolling it out one time. Let's see if I can get enough out of this little bit of dough.
Yep.
So this custard that we're going to make has butter, sugar, castor sugar, which is really a super fine sugar.
I believe the Englishmen use castor sugar
Yep.
much more than we do. Yeah.
And if you don't have castor sugar, you can always make it by putting granulated sugar in a food processor and blitzing it for about
That's a good tip.
5 or 6 times.
Good tip.
All right. And let me get my tamper. And we'll be right back here in just a second.
Okay.
All right, Betty.
Now let me see what you're going to do with
We're going to do a little cleanup right here. So what I've got here is a tart tamper, and it's for making tarts and putting them into a tart pan and making the little well.
Right.
So it's a little wooden tart tamper. And you just push down.
That's a new equipment to me.
Some new equipment. It's just a little wooden tamper, and it makes the
Look how
perfect.
nicely that does.
See, there we go. Sometimes you might want to spray your pan depending on the pan that you're using. This is a little non-stick tray, but if you need to, you can always add just a little bit of Baker's Joy or Pam that has a little bit of flour in it. But this will be perfect for what we're doing. Sometimes you can use your fingers if you don't have one of these tampers.
Right.
But I like using the tamper. I think it gives it a nice mold.
Probably what they did in old days, they turned a cup upside down.
Exactly.
Yeah, certainly.
All right. So I'm going to clean up. I'm going to bring over our mixer, and we're going to work on our custard.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Just take me a few minutes to tidy up my workspace.
Okay.
We'll be
please,
back.
Go ahead.
All right. So Betty, we're back now to do the custard part of the Gloucester tart.
To fill this little.
Right. So the first thing we're going to do is we need 2 ounces of unsalted butter at room temperature, which I've got here. Put that in our mixer. The next thing is I'm going to be using castor sugar. Now, castor sugar is a super fine sugar, right?
Yeah, that's fine.
They use a lot of that overseas,
England,
especially in England. And if you can't find it here in the States, which sometimes you can find it like at a Whole Foods or somewhere like that, you can actually make your own by putting granulated sugar in a food processor.
Yeah, grinding.
But you always have to make sure that you weigh the sugar. You can't do it by volume. You actually have to weigh the sugar, because if you use castor sugar in lieu of granulated sugar, when you scoop a cup, you could get more castor sugar than granulated sugar because the pieces of the sugar are bigger.
Yeah.
And so, of course, always weigh your ingredients, especially when baking. I always weigh mine in grams and also, but that's castor sugar, and that's 2 ounces of castor sugar that we're going to make our custard with. So I'll get that in.
There's no one here that carries castor sugar. You haven't found it?
I have not. Sometimes at Publix you might find like Dixie Crystals, or Domino's sometimes will say quick dissolving sugar. Normally time that's castor sugar. They just call it a little something different. But again, you can always make your own too. So that was 2 ounces of butter, 2 ounces of castor sugar. And so we're just going to get that to creaming just a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and raise my bowl. I've got my paddle on my KitchenAid here. We're just going to turn it on medium speed just for a few minutes.
Right.
We're not baking a cake or anything, but we're just going to get the sugar and the butter incorporated.
Well, I assume castor sugar is easier to incorporate than our regular sugar.
It is.
Much easier, yeah.
And that's exactly right. So castor sugar is a quicker dissolving sugar, especially when you're creaming it with butter. In fact, when I make pound cakes, I use castor sugar because it gets those sugar crystals all into the
That's a good
butter.
idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is just going to go for a minute or so.
I love your paddle on that machine. Yeah.
You know, I use the old one that came with the machine, but so I don't always have to stop and scrape down, which I still do that a lot, but I like the paddle that's got the
It is, yeah.
the
I
wipers
see
on it. So it's been just a few minutes, and our sugar and butter have been blended together.
Okay.
The next thing we're going to do, and one thing about this Gloucester tart, it's basically the custard is sugar, butter, 1 egg, and almond extract or almond essence, as they call it. And it's just a teaspoon of the almond essence. So we're going to go ahead and add the 1 egg in slowly. We're going to get that mixed in. Next, as we're watching our egg being mixed into our sugar and butter, we're going to add a little bit of teaspoon of almond. And we're going to let that go for just a minute on medium-low. And once I see that the egg is starting to incorporate into the butter and sugar mixture, I'll stop and we'll start adding our rice flour. Now, Betty, have you ever had a Bakewell tart?
No.
No. So a Bakewell tart is what we're actually making. The Gloucester tart is a variation on the Bakewell tart, which is basically a pastry crust with some raspberry jam, and then an almond custard, or as they call over there, a frangipane. Okay. Now, what makes the Gloucester tart a little different than a Bakewell tart? And Bakewell, the town of Bakewell in Great Britain, is 86 miles from Gloucester. And so, I don't know who, but somebody must have brought this recipe to Gloucester, and then someone didn't have all the ingredients, so they just said, hey, let's substitute some ground rice. Well, ground rice is really hard to find here in the States. And so I actually sent an email to the Gloucester Museum in Gloucester, England, and said, hey, I'm trying to make this Gloucester tart for Global Gloucester Day, and I cannot find ground rice. Can you explain what that is? Well, they said they really didn't have a good idea either what I could use in its in place of ground rice. And so I sent an email to someone that I'm friends with, I won't say who, but they were on season 5 of the Great British Bake Off. So I contacted them. Well, they did some research and got back with me, and they said, well, there's not a lot of history about this Gloucester tart that they could find. So I reached out to one more person, and this person is a Irish pastry chef, and she's a cookbook author. And so I sent an email to her, just to her email box that she had on the internet, and lo and behold, she emailed me back. And she said, you know what, you can use rice flour in lieu of the ground rice. So that's what we're using. So that's what
makes this whole tart different.
Yes. That's right. The Gloucester tart is different than a Bakewell tart because it has this ground rice, or in our case, rice flour.
Rice flour.
So we're going to put the rice flour in now, and this will be finishing up.
Where did you find the rice flour?
Bob's Red Mill carries rice flour.
Oh, okay.
So I was able to find that over in, I think it was over in Williamsburg is where I found it. So we're going to go ahead and incorporate this rice flour, and it's 2 ounces of rice flour into our custard mixture here, and things will start to come together, and we'll be able to finish our tarts and get them in the oven.
Okay.
All right. So on low again, 2 ounces of rice flour. We're going to kick that up for just a minute to mix. Yep. Very interesting recipe.
I wonder what happens if customers watching you and other cooks that can't get the rice flour, what regular flour would do.
I don't know
What
if
do
it
you
would.
think?
I don't know. I don't know if it would have the same consistency, because I can tell you rice flour is really fine.
Yeah, I know.
And I was nervous about it. There it looks like it's come together. Why I'm nervous about it was that because as I was trying this recipe out over and over and over again, if you put too much jam or too much of the custard mixture, when it bakes, it spreads everywhere. And so I had to actually scale back the amount of jam that I put in each tart, as well as the amount of custard that I put on the top. So I'm going to turn this on for like 1 more minute, and then
Okay.
we'll get ready to assemble our tarts and get them in the oven.
We'll fill them up. Now, when this cooks, the dough is going to fold over the filling.
No,
It's not?
it's going to keep like a little pie shell, and the custard will create a crust on the top.
Oh, it will. Okay.
So it looks like our custard is incorporated nicely, and I think it's going to be ready to use. So let me go ahead and get that out. I'm going to put my gloves on, and Betty, you might want to
mine
put yours on
okay.
as well, because you'll be kind of you'll be in charge of the jam, and I'll be in charge of the
You're going
custard.
to have to watch me. I may put too much.
I'm going to keep my eye on you. All right, I'm going to take my paddle off, get my bowl, and so Betty, as you can see, get my spatula here. So this is our custard. So it's got egg and sugar.
Well, it looks very much like the dough, only much thinner.
Much thinner, that's exactly right. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give it one quick stir. Let me put my paddle down.
Oh, you're supposed to lick that.
You can't, I'm not sure I should do that on camera.
Okay.
But you're more than welcome to take a lick if you want.
No. So,
We might get that in the paper.
right.
Betty licks my beaters at Library Kitchen.
Right.
So I'm going to give this just a quick stir with my spatula, and I'll show you that's what it looks like.
That's what it looks like.
So it's fairly smooth, and when it bakes, it's going to make a little, almost like a little crumb topping. It's really different. It's very much very different.
Well, now, did we put the jam in first?
Yes.
Oh, no, you put that in first.
You're going to put your jam in first.
Jam in first.
So let's go ahead, and I'm going to let you use a teaspoon there.
Okay.
And so let's move
Just this one or this one?
either side you want. So what you're going to do is take a teaspoon and then slide it off with your finger in each one of the pastry shells. And you can use your finger if you need to.
Okay.
I'll do
Tell
this
me
for you.
something. What
Right in the center.
is that enough?
Yep, that's plenty. It's right in the center.
Okay.
So you're going to do this 12 times.
That's okay. Well, 12 is a good even number.
And this jam or preserves actually came from Great Britain. It's Wilkins & Sons, and I ordered that about a month ago because I wanted to try to be as authentic as I could with this. So I went ahead and ordered this raspberry jam. Some recipes I've seen for the Gloucester tart, you can use apricot, which I think
I've
would be
spilled
really good.
some.
Oh, that's okay.
Is that okay? Okay.
All right. Yep.
I feel like I want to taste it as I'm going along, but I won't do that.
I can tell you while I was testing the recipe at home, I licked my fingers quite a bit. I won't do it on camera. But yeah, so this is really good. And it was just right for, I think, with a cup of coffee.
I think I've got too much in it.
That's okay.
Is that okay? That one may spill
that
over.
might be-
all the things we're not supposed to do.
That's all right. There'll be an example of what not to do.
Okay. That one too.
That's all right. Yeah, there you go. Yep. There you go.
Here we go. This is good, smooth jam.
Very smooth jam. This is a seedless jam. Like I said, I ordered it, and it was, it's really good. I tried a couple of our brands here that I got from Whole Foods. I got one from Publix. But this one had a little bit of a different flavor. So just a little bit. Yeah, there you go. Right in the center.
There we go.
Perfect.
How about that? This one a little bit in the center.
That's
Get this
good.
a little bit in the center.
And I'll take your spoon, and I'll
Can I like this?
You can if you want.
Good, good, good.
Isn't that good?
That's good. That's
a
good.
different flavor. All right.
Okay.
And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use just my spatula, but you want basically about a teaspoon on the top, and you just kind of smooth it out over the jam. Like I said, I tried this a couple different times at home, and honestly, when I used the tablespoon, it was too much. I've learned that it doesn't seem like a lot when it's in this tart pan.
Right.
But it is when it cooks because
When it
it
cooks,
does spread. So that might need
Well,
a
I'm
little
sure the egg's going to make it rise.
The
and-
eggs will
yeah.
make it right, yep. But I tell you, when I did overfill it, it was a mess. I mean, the tarts burst, the crust kind of went everywhere on the pan. So what we're going to do is we're going to bake this at 350 degrees for about 22 to 23 minutes, 24 minutes. Each oven's a little different.
Right.
And so, but I will tell you, when they come out and they let them cool for about 10 or 15 minutes, they are really good with a cup of coffee. I can say that for sure.
Tea. You're supposed to
Tea.
say tea.
I'm sorry,
You're supposed
tea.
to say tea.
You're right, tea. It's wonderful with some Earl Grey tea. So again, about a teaspoon, maybe a little bit more. You can just spread that out just so it covers the jam, because it will, as it heats up in the oven, it will rise.
That's
But it's going to make
interesting.
it'll make a little crust. Yep. All right. Just a little bit more there. Perfect.
Makes a pretty dish just to put in the oven. It's a pretty, just like it is. Yeah.
So 350 degrees for about 22, 23 minutes. You have to look at it and see when they start getting kind of brown. So we're going to pop these in the oven now. We'll
Wonderful. Let's go.
Be back in about 20 minutes.
Wonderful. Can't wait to taste them.
So Betty, the oven timer just went off. It's been about 23, 24 minutes on our tarts, and I think they're ready. Are you ready for the critique of the tart filling?
I'm going to see how I did. Okay, so
All right, let's bring these over. All right, this pan is really hot. So
Oh, Chris, they all went over.
a couple of them did, but that's okay because, the jam kind of...
I know it won't hurt the taste, but they're not supposed to look like that.
Well, we might have just overfilled them just a little
I think I
bit.
did. I think I
A
overfilled them.
teaspoon is all you can really put in these.
Okay.
And again, it's trial and error. So based on if you have one of these little tins, or if you have a muffin tin and you had a little bit more dough in there, then they might not flow over because the pan would be deeper. But remember, these are little teeny tarts. As you can see, they're pretty shallow. We're going to let these sit and cool because
Not just a few went over, they all went over.
this one
Chris.
didn't.
Oh, okay. We got one.
I think
okay.
I did that one.
Come on.
No, they didn't go over that far, but you know what? They're still going to taste great. They might not look quite as pretty as maybe they do over in Great Britain, but hey, this is the Gloucester County, Virginia version of a Gloucester tart.
I have a good teacher, but I just didn't. Okay, next time I'll do better, Chris. Next time I'll do better.
Well, maybe you can practice up until Global Gloucester Day on September 2nd, and you can you'll perfect it by then.
Now see, we even messed the pan up.
Well, that's all right, because it's nonstick, and let me tell you, it cleans right up. Now, these tarts are going to be super hot for about 10 to 15 minutes. So we don't want to eat any until we let them cool just a little bit. But look, they're going to be great.
I'll tell you what, they're going to make a pretty picture because they're so colorful.
They really are.
Yes.
And again, that rice flour custard mixture on the top made just a little, almost like a little cake on the top. Now this one did get a little overfilled. I think I must have done that one.
No, I did them all. I accept the blame for that.
Okay, I'll let you have it.
Okay.
So here's what we're going to do. We're going to let these rest for 10 or 15 minutes, and then we'll bring it back out and we'll try it. How's that?
Okay, good enough.
All right. 10 to 15 minutes.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you.
So Betty, it's been about 15 minutes. These things have cooled off. I think we're good to try one. The filling might be just a little warm, but I think it'll be good enough to try. So you get to choose whatever Gloucester tart you would like to try.
Well, we can see that I put too much in it. So I'm going to take one with lots of the raspberry jam in it.
I'll do the same thing.
Okay.
So let's give a shot and see how these look.
That's good.
It's a good little tart. Not bad. My crust probably could have been just a tad bit thinner.
Yeah.
But it's a flaky little crust
I like it.
with a little.
It has enough jam in there to make it taste good, see?
That's exactly right. A little custard on the top. You know, you can probably back the baking off maybe a minute or so, but you know, this is a trial and error kind of thing that you have to do. You know, as you bake these, the internet doesn't have a lot of information about the Gloucester tart at all, and so experimentation on the recipe has to happen to try to get it tweaked just right.
I think you've done a marvelous job of getting it all together from what.
Yep. Well,
But it tastes mighty good.
it is pretty good. I think it would be good with a little bit of tea.
Next time, I'll follow instructions a little better. I'll put a little less jam. Okay.
A little less jam, a little more
less jam.
custard.
Right. So well.
Well, thank you for joining us here in the Library Kitchen.
Chris, thank you. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
And happy
And I
Gloucester
learned so
Day.
much from you.
Yes, happy Gloucester Day.
Thank you.
Cheers.
And to you, cheers. Here we go.
Bye-bye.